The morning of my son Noah's 8th birthday felt like the happiest day of my life. I had been secretly planning this party for weeks because I wanted to see that bright smile on his face. Every balloon, every decoration, and every little surprise was chosen with love. Dad! Noah ran into the kitchen wearing the biggest smile. Today's finally my birthday. I laughed and hugged him. Happy birthday, buddy. He looked up at me with shining eyes. Mom's coming home early, right? She promised she wouldn't miss blowing out the candles. I smiled, even though something inside me felt uneasy. Yes, son, your mom promised. She'll be here. He grinned. I told all my friends both my parents would stand beside me today. Those words stayed in my heart as I watched him leave for school. Before leaving for work, Emily kissed Noah's forehead. I'll be back before the party starts, she said. I looked in her eyes and replied softly, don't be late. Today means everything to him. She smiled confidently. I won't. At that moment, I believed her. I stood alone in the living room, staring at the birthday decorations. The colorful balloons still floated near the ceiling, but the laughter I had imagined never truly arrived. Noah walked over to me quietly. Dad! I looked at him and forced a smile. Yeah, buddy. He held my hand. Did Mom get very busy? I swallowed the lump in my throat. I think something came up. He looked down at the floor. Did I do something wrong? My heart broke. I knelt in front of him and gently placed my hands on his shoulders. No, son, listen to me carefully. You did absolutely nothing wrong. Then why isn't she here? I couldn't answer immediately. Instead, I hugged him as tightly as I could. You're the best thing that ever happened to me. Never think you aren't important. He wrapped his little arms around me. Will you always stay with me, Dad? I smiled through my tears. I promise. No matter what happens in this world, I will always be by your side. He nodded and whispered, that's enough for me. At that moment, I realized something painful. Sometimes one parent's love has to become strong enough to cover the absence of another. I didn't know what tomorrow would bring, but I knew one thing for certain. I would never let my son feel abandoned again. I looked at the clock again. 5:30. The party had already started, but my eyes were still fixed on my phone. Come on, Emily, I whispered. Just answer once. I called again. No answer. A few seconds later, my sister Sarah walked over to me. Still nothing. I slowly shook my head. No, she sighed. Daniel, the guests are asking where Emily is. I forced a weak smile. I'll handle it. As I turned around, Noah ran toward me. Dad, yeah, buddy. He looked at the front door with hopeful eyes. Was that Mom? I swallowed the pain inside me. No, it was just the neighbors. His smile disappeared. Oh, I placed my hand on his shoulder. She's probably stuck in traffic. He nodded. She promised. I know. I believe her. Those 3 words hit harder than anything else. I smiled for him, but inside, I was beginning to fear that promises don't always come true. Just then, my phone vibrated. I looked at the screen. An unknown number had sent me a single photo. The moment I opened it, my entire world stopped. My hand started shaking as I opened the photo. For a second, I couldn't even breathe. Emily was sitting across from another man in an elegant restaurant. They were smiling. Not a polite smile. Not a business smile. The kind of smile I hadn't seen on her face in a very long time. I stared at the screen, hoping my eyes were lying to me. They must be discussing work, I whispered. But deep inside, I already knew I was lying to myself. Daniel, Sarah's voice pulled me back. The cake is ready. I quickly locked my phone and forced a smile. I'm coming. I walked toward Noah. He was standing beside the birthday cake, wearing a paper crown. His eyes searched every corner of the room. Then he looked at me. Dad, yes, buddy. Can we wait 5 more minutes? I felt my heart crack. For Mom. He nodded with a hopeful smile. She promised she'd be here before I made my wish. I looked into his innocent eyes. Every second felt heavier than the last. I wanted to tell him the truth. I wanted to scream. Instead, I gently held his hand. Okay, I said softly. We'll wait. 5 minutes passed. Then another 5. The front door never opened. Noah finally looked at me again. His voice was barely a whisper. I don't think Mama's coming. Is she? I couldn't answer. I simply pulled him into my arms while trying to hide the tears burning behind my eyes. At that moment, I realized something painful. Sometimes silence hurts more than the truth ever could. Everyone gathered around the birthday cake. The room filled with people singing, "Happy birthday to you." I stood beside Noah, forcing myself to smile. He closed his eyes for a few seconds. Then he opened them and looked at the empty space next to him. That was where his mother was supposed to be. He looked at me and asked quietly, "Dad, should we start?" My throat felt dry. I nodded. "Yes, buddy." Before blowing out the candles, he whispered, "I only wish for Mom to come home." Those simple words cut deeper than anything I had ever heard. The candles went out. The applause filled the room. Everyone smiled. Everyone except me. I clapped with the others, but inside, I felt completely empty. I helped Noah cut the first slice of cake. He looked toward the front door one last time. Then he forced a little smile and handed me the first piece. "This is for you, Dad." I smiled back, even though my eyes were full of tears. "Thank you, buddy." After the guests slowly began leaving, the house became quiet. Balloons still floated across the ceiling. Half-eaten cake sat on the table. Wrapping paper covered the floor. It looked like a happy birthday, but I knew the truth. The happiest day my son had been waiting for had turned into the day his little heart learned what disappointment felt like. I looked at my phone one final time. There were still no calls, no messages, no epaligi, only silence. I took a deep breath and looked at my son sleeping on the couch with his birthday crown still on his head. At that moment, I made a promise to myself. No matter what happened next, I would never let anyone break my son's heart like this again. The clock showed 12:38 when I finally heard the front door unlock. I didn't move. I simply looked up as Emily walked inside. She froze the moment she saw me sitting in the living room. "Daniel, you're still awake?" I answered quietly. "I've been waiting." She forced a small smile. "I'm sorry I'm late." I looked straight into her eyes. "So, where were you?" She placed her purse on the table and took a deep breath. "Ryan called me." I felt my chest tighten. He was having a difficult night. I stayed silent. "He needed someone to talk to," she continued. "I couldn't just leave him alone." I looked at her for a long moment before asking the only question that mattered. Was he more important than our 8-year-old son? Her lips parted, but no words came out. That silence hurt more than any lie ever could. Just then, I heard a quiet sound from the hallway. Someone was listening. My heart told me exactly who it was. A soft creak came from the hallway. I turned my head. "Noah," I called gently. There was no answer. Emily looked nervous. "Is he awake?" Before I could reply, Noah slowly stepped into the living room, holding his favorite blanket. His eyes were red. "Mom!" Emily rushed toward him. "Sweetheart, why aren't you asleep?" He took one small step back. I heard everything. The room fell silent. Emily's face turned pale. "Noah, I can explain." He looked at her with tears in his eyes. "You promised you'd be at my birthday." "I know. You always tell me promises are important." She lowered her head. "I am sorry." Noah's voice trembled. "Did you forget me?" Those 4 words broke my heart. Emily tried to hug him again, but he quietly walked behind me and held my hand instead. I squeezed his little hand without saying a word. Sometimes silence protects a child better than anger ever could. Just then, another voice came from the front door. "Enough." It was my sister, Sarah. Her expression told me this conversation was only beginning. Sarah stepped into the room and looked straight at Emily. "I've stayed quiet for years," she said. "Not tonight." Emily wiped her tears. "Sarah, please don't make this worse." "Worse?" Sarah replied. "Noah spent the whole evening waiting at the door while you were somewhere else." I raised my hand gently. "Sarah." She looked at me. "No, Daniel. You've defended her long enough." The room became painfully quiet. Emily whispered, "I never wanted to hurt Noah." I finally spoke. "Maybe you didn't want to, but you did." She couldn't look at me. I took a slow breath. "Do you remember Noah's school play last year?" Emily stayed silent. "You missed that too." She closed her eyes. "And our anniversary dinner?" Another silence. "The family trip you canceled?" No answer. One forgotten promise after another came back to me like pieces of a puzzle I had refused to see. I realized this wasn't about one birthday. It was about every moment I had excused, every disappointment I had ignored, and every promise I kept believing. My trust wasn't breaking because of one night. It had been breaking for years. Just then, Emily's phone lit up on the coffee table. The screen showed a single name, Ryan. Nobody said a word, but that one name changed the atmosphere in the room. Ryan's name stayed on the screen. The phone kept ringing. Emily stared at it, then slowly reached for it. I quietly said, "Go ahead, answer it." She stopped. "I don't want to." "Why?" I asked. "A few hours ago, he was important enough to miss Noah's birthday." She lowered her hand. "I'm not answering." The call ended. For a few seconds, the house was completely silent. Then Emily's phone vibrated again. This time, it wasn't Ryan. A message appeared from someone I had never spoken to before. Olivia. Emily's face changed the moment she read the sender's name. I noticed. "Who's Olivia?" Emily hesitated. "A co-worker." Before she could lock the screen, another notification appeared. "Daniel deserves the truth. Please call me tomorrow." I looked at Emily. "What truth?" She didn't answer. I don't know what she means. For the first time that night, I realized there was still something she wasn't telling me. The birthday, the lies, Ryan, none of it felt like the whole story anymore. I looked at the message one last time. Whatever Olivia wanted to tell me, I knew it would change everything. I couldn't sleep that night. Every time I closed my eyes, the memories came back. My phone suddenly rang. An unknown number. I answered. "Hello." A calm female voice spoke. "Is this Daniel?" "Yes." "My name is Olivia." I stayed silent. "I think you deserve to know the truth." My heart started racing. "What truth?" "There are things about Emily and Ryan that you don't know." I gripped the phone tightly. "If you're calling to create more problems, don't. I'm calling because I can't watch an innocent family fall apart." I took a deep breath. "Then tell me everything." She paused. "Not over the phone." "When?" "Tomorrow morning." The call ended. I looked out the window. For the first time, I wasn't afraid of the truth. I was afraid of how much it would change my life. I arrived at the cafe 10 minutes early. Every passing second felt heavier than the last. Then the door opened. A woman in a gray coat walked toward my table. "Daniel." I stood up. "Olivia." She nodded and sat down. "Thank you for coming." I looked at her seriously. "You said I deserve the truth." She took a slow breath. "Ido." I leaned forward. "Then please, don't hide anything." Olivia looked down at her coffee before speaking. For months, I watched Emily struggle. I frowned. Struggle with what? She kept telling herself she was only helping Ryan. My chest tightened, but Ryan never wanted help. What did he want? Olivia met my eyes. He wanted control. The words hit me like a punch. He knew Emily still felt guilty about how their relationship ended. So he used that guilt? Yes. I stayed silent. Olivia continued softly. I warned her more than once. What did she say? She told me everything was under control. I laughed bitterly. It clearly wasn't. Olivia nodded. No, it wasn't. For the first time, I realized this wasn't just about broken promises. Someone had been quietly pulling the strings all along. Olivia slowly placed a small envelope on the table. I looked at it without touching it. What's inside? She answered quietly. The proof you came here for. My hands felt cold as I opened the envelope. There were printed text messages, restaurant receipts, photos. None of them showed an affair. But every page told the same story. Ryan kept asking Emily for favors. Emily kept saying yes. I looked up. Why didn't she tell me? Olivia sighed. She thought she could fix everything before you found out. I shook my head. Secrets never fix anything. They only grow, Olivia replied. I looked at another receipt. It was dated the same week Noah had begged us to spend a weekend together. Instead, Emily had met Ryan. My heart sank. So every time she said she was working late. Olivia slowly nodded. Not every time, but enough times to hurt your family. I closed the envelope. For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, I whispered, I don't recognize my own marriage anymore. Olivia looked at me with sympathy. Daniel, whatever you decide next, make sure it's for your peace, not because of your anger. Her words stayed with me as I stood up to leave. I knew one thing. When I walked back through my front door, nothing in my life would ever feel the same again. I stopped my car in front of the house. Emily was standing near the door. The moment she saw me, she looked away. I slowly walked toward her. How long have you been waiting? She took a deep breath. Long enough. I looked at her carefully. Did you know I met Olivia? Her face changed. Just for a second. But that second was enough. You did, didn't you? I asked. Emily lowered her eyes. Daniel. No, please don't give me another excuse. My voice was calm, but my heart was breaking. How many times did you choose him over us? She started crying. It wasn't like that. Then what was it like? She stayed silent. I looked at the woman standing in front of me. The same woman who promised to stand beside me forever. I defended you when people questioned you. I know. I made excuses for you when Noah was disappointed. I know. I told myself you're just tired, just busy, just overwhelmed. My voice became softer, but you knew the truth. Emily wiped her tears. I made mistakes. I nodded slowly. No, Emily. Mistakes happen once. I looked toward the house. This was a choice. She whispered, Can you ever forgive me? I wanted to answer. I wanted to say yes. But for the first time, I didn't know if forgiveness was enough. I walked into the house without saying another word. Emily followed quietly. For once, she wasn't trying to explain. She wasn't trying to defend herself. She knew my silence was louder than any argument. I went to the living room and sat down. A few minutes later, Noah came out of his room. Dad, I looked at him. Yeah, buddy. He sat beside me. Are you and Mom fighting because of me? My heart broke. I immediately shook my head. No, Noah, never think that. But everyone feels different now. I held his hand. Some things between adults become complicated. He looked confused. Does complicated mean broken? I didn't have an answer. Later that night, after Noah went back to sleep, I noticed something on the table. A small key. I had never seen it before. I looked at Emily. What is this? Her face changed instantly. Daniel, don't. That reaction told me everything. What does it open? She stayed quiet. I picked up the key. Emily, after everything that happened, I need the truth. Her eyes filled with fear. That key belongs to a drawer in my office. Inspirational. What's inside? She whispered. Something I should have shown you a long time ago. I felt my heartbeat increase. Then tomorrow morning, I placed the key on the table. We opened it together. Emily looked away. And at that moment, I knew whatever was inside that drawer would decide whether anything between us could ever be saved. The decision that changed my future. The morning sunlight filled the room, but it couldn't warm the emptiness inside me. Emily sat across from me, her eyes swollen from crying. Neither of us spoke for a long time. Finally, she whispered, Daniel, please say something. I looked at her calmly. I've been saying something for years. She lowered her head. You just stopped listening. Tears rolled down her face. I know I failed you. I nodded slowly. And you failed Noah. Those words hit harder than anything else. She covered her face and cried. I would do anything to fix this. I took a deep breath. Some things can't be fixed. She looked at me with hope still shining in her eyes. Are you giving up on us? I stood and walked toward the window. I'm not giving up. I paused before continuing. I'm finally choosing peace. The room became silent. I spent years trying to save this family by myself. I turned to face her. But a marriage cannot survive when only one person is fighting for it. Emily quietly whispered, I still love you. I closed my eyes for a moment. Maybe you do, but love without trust isn't enough. She couldn't answer. I picked up my car keys. Where are you going? She asked. To clear my mind. And when you come back, I looked at her one last time. When I come back, I'll know what my final decision is. I walked out of the house without looking back. As I started the engine, my phone vibrated. It was a message from my lawyer. The divorce papers are ready whenever you are. I stared at the screen for several seconds. Then I looked at my reflection in the mirror. For the first time in a long time, I wasn't asking what Emily wanted. I was asking what kind of future my son and I deserved. I took a deep breath, started driving, and never felt more certain that my next choice would change our lives forever. I sat across from Emily, but the distance between us felt greater than ever. She looked at me with tired eyes. Daniel, please believe me. I replied quietly. I believed you for years. She reached for my hand. I never wanted to hurt you. I slowly pulled my hand away. But you did. Her shoulders dropped. I thought I could fix everything before you found out. I shook my head. Truth doesn't become easier because you hide it. She wiped away her tears. What happens now? I looked toward Noah's room. Right now, our son needs honesty more than promises. She whispered, "Do you think he'll ever forgive me?" I answered after a long silence. That's not my decision to make. The room fell quiet again. For the first time, neither of us was arguing. We were simply facing the consequences of choices that could no longer be undone. Just then my phone vibrated. It was a message from an unknown number. "If you want the whole truth about Ryan, meet me at 9 a.m. Come alone." I stared at the screen, knowing this message could change everything. The next morning, I arrived at the cafe exactly at 9. I looked around. Every table was occupied except one in the corner. A man wearing a dark jacket slowly stood up. "Daniel?" I nodded. "You're the one who sent the message?" He pulled out a chair. "Please sit down." I remained standing. "First tell me who you are." He took a deep breath. "My name is Ethan. I've never met you." "I know. So how do you know my name?" He looked me straight in the eyes. "I'm Ryan's younger brother." For a moment, I couldn't speak. "What do you want from me?" "I'm not here to defend Ryan." "Then why are you here?" "Because I'm tired of cleaning up the damage he leaves behind." His voice sounded sincere. "He has done this before." I frowned. "What do you mean?" "He gets close to people, earns their trust, and then uses them when it benefits him." I felt my stomach tighten. Emily wasn't the first person. Ethan slowly shook his head. "No." He reached into his bag and placed a folder on the table. I brought proof. I stared at the folder without opening it. "Why are you helping me?" His answer came without hesitation. "Because someone should have warned the last family too." Those words echoed in my mind. I finally picked up the folder. Whatever was inside, I knew there would be no turning back. My hands felt heavier than the folder itself. I slowly opened it. The first page showed copies of bank transfers. The second contained screenshots of text messages. The third was a photograph of Ryan sitting with another woman. I looked up at Ethan. "What is all this?" He answered quietly. "It's the life Ryan never wanted anyone to see." I stared at the photo again. "Emily doesn't know about this?" He shook his head. "No." I took a slow breath. So while she believed she was helping him, he was telling the same stories to other people. Ethan finished. I couldn't believe what I was hearing. He asked every one of them for money, favors, or introductions. I closed the folder. I spent months blaming only Emily. Ethan nodded sadly. She made her own choices. But Ryan knew exactly how to manipulate those choices. The cafe became silent. For the first time, I felt something different. Not anger. Clarity. I finally understood that I couldn't control what Emily had done, but I could control what I did next. I stood up and held the folder in my hands. "Thank you for telling me the truth." Ethan gave a small nod. "I hope you find the peace my family never did." As I walked toward the exit, my phone rang. Emily's name appeared on the screen. I watched it ring until it stopped. A few seconds later, another message arrived. "Daniel, please come home. There's something about Noah you need to know." My heart skipped a beat. Without another thought, I rushed toward my car. My hands tightened around the steering wheel as I drove home. Emily's message kept repeating in my mind. "There's something about Noah you need to know." My heart raced. I wasn't thinking about our marriage anymore. I was thinking about my son. The moment I reached the house, I rushed inside. "Emily." She came running from the hallway. "Thank God you're here." "Where's Noah?" "He's upstairs." I didn't wait another second. I ran to his room and opened the door. He was lying in bed with a blanket wrapped around him. His little face looked pale. "Dad." I sat beside him immediately. "Buddy, what happened?" He smiled weakly. "I'm okay." I gently touched his forehead. He felt warm. I looked back at Emily. "Did you call the doctor?" She nodded. "Yes. The fever started an hour ago." Noah slowly reached for my hand. "I'm sorry I made you worry." I forced a smile. "You never have to apologize for being sick." He looked at me with tired eyes. "Will you stay with me?" I squeezed his hand. "I'm not going anywhere." He closed his eyes, still holding my hand. After a few minutes, we quietly walked out of the room so he could rest. Emily stood in the hallway. "I'm scared, Daniel." I looked at her calmly. "So am I." She whispered, "I know I've made terrible mistakes." I didn't answer. She continued, "But seeing Noah like this made me realize what really matters." I took a deep breath. I hope you never forget this feeling. At that moment, my phone vibrated again. It was my lawyer. I looked at the message, but didn't open it. For now, my only priority was the little boy sleeping peacefully upstairs. Everything else could wait until morning. The lawyer placed the final document in front of me. He looked at me quietly. Daniel, once you sign this, there's no turning back. I stared at the papers for several seconds. For years, I had imagined growing old with Emily. Now, my future fit into a few sheets of paper. I picked up the pen. Before I signed, my phone rang. It was Emily. I answered. Hello. Her voice was shaking. Please don't do this. I closed my eyes. I never wanted our story to end like this. I know, she whispered. Neither did I. I took a slow breath. But stories don't end because of one mistake. They end because trust disappears. She began crying. I've changed. I hope you have. I'll spend the rest of my life proving it. I looked through the office window. I truly hope you become the mother Noah deserves. She stayed silent. And I hope one day you forgive yourself. Another long pause followed. Finally, I said softly, Goodbye, Emily. I ended the call before she could answer. My hands no longer trembled. I signed my name at the bottom of the page. The lawyer collected the documents and nodded. It's done. For the first time in months, I felt strangely calm. When I stepped outside, the morning air felt different. I wasn't walking away from love. I was walking toward peace. I took out my phone and smiled at Noah's picture on the screen. Everything I had done, every painful decision, every sleepless night, had been for him. I started my car and drove home. Not to the life I had lost, but to the future my son and I were finally ready to build together. I sat alone in my office, staring at the divorce papers lying on my desk. I had signed hundreds of business contracts in my life, but these papers felt heavier than all of them combined. My phone buzzed. It was Sarah. Daniel, where are you? At the office. Have you made your decision? I looked at the papers again. I think I already have. She stayed quiet for a moment. Then don't let guilt stop you. This isn't easy. I know, she replied softly. But staying in a broken marriage isn't easy either. I leaned back in my chair. I'm not afraid of starting over. Then what are you afraid of? I closed my eyes. I'm afraid Noah will think I gave up on our family. Sarah answered immediately. He'll never think that if you keep choosing him every single day. Her words settled deep inside me. Just then, another call came in. Emily. I stared at her name on the screen until the ringing stopped. A second later, she sent a message. Please meet me one last time. I need to tell you something I should have said months ago. I read the message twice. My heart told me to ignore it, but my mind whispered, what if this is the truth you've been waiting for? I stood up, picked up my car keys, and quietly walked toward the door. Whatever Emily wanted to say, I knew this meeting would decide the future of our family. I arrived at the park 5 minutes early. Emily was already there, but she wasn't alone. A man stood beside her with his hands in his pockets. The moment I recognized him, I stopped walking. Ryan. He looked at me and quietly said, I'm not here to fight. I frowned. Then why are you here? Emily stepped forward. Daniel, please let him speak. I folded my arms. You have 1 minute. Ryan lowered his head. Elite. I didn't answer. I lied to Emily. I lied to you. And I lied to everyone around me. His voice sounded different. Not confident. Not arrogant. Just tired. I looked at him carefully. What do you want? I want to tell the truth. He took a deep breath. I used Emily because I knew she trusted me. Emily closed her eyes. I kept asking for favors because I thought she would never say no. I looked at Emily. She couldn't even meet my eyes. Ryan continued. I destroyed more than your marriage. I hurt your son. Those words hung in the air. For the first time, I saw genuine regret on his face. But regret couldn't erase what had already happened. I looked at both of them and spoke calmly. The truth came too late. Without another word, I turned around and walked away. Behind me, I heard Emily call my name. I didn't stop. For the first time in months, I chose to keep walking. I walked toward my car without looking back. Emily kept calling my name. I didn't stop. As I reached the driver's door, I noticed a white envelope tucked beneath the windshield wiper. There was only one word written on it. Daniel. I slowly opened it. Inside was a handwritten letter. The first line caught my attention immediately. If you're reading this, I've finally found the courage to tell the truth. I recognized Emily's handwriting. I continued reading. I blamed my mistakes on confusion, stress, and bad timing. But the truth is much simpler. I stopped appreciating the people who loved me the most. My hands began to tremble. You spent years protecting our family, while I kept believing I could fix everything tomorrow. A tear rolled down my cheek. Tomorrow never came. I closed my eyes for a moment. Every word felt honest. Every sentence carried regret. But honesty, arriving after the damage, could never erase the damage itself. I folded the letter and placed it back inside the envelope. Just then my phone rang. It was Noah. I answered immediately. "Hey, buddy." His cheerful voice filled the silence. "Dad, when are you coming home?" I smiled without realizing it. "Soon. I saved your favorite cookie." I laughed softly. "You did?" "Yep. I didn't want to eat it without you." At that moment, everything became clear. My future wasn't waiting behind me. It was waiting at home. I started the engine and whispered to myself, "I'm done living in yesterday." I drove away, carrying Emily's letter with me, not as a reason to go back, but as a reminder of the lesson I would never forget. The next morning, I walked into my lawyer's office, carrying only one thing: peace. Attorney James looked at me and quietly asked, "Are you ready?" I took a deep breath. I wasn't yesterday. And today, I looked down at the documents in front of me. Today, I finally understand that protecting my son is more important than protecting a broken marriage. He nodded. "You've thought this through." "I have." He slid the papers across the desk. "Once you sign, the process officially begins." I picked up the pen. For a brief moment, memories fill my mind. Our wedding day, the day Noah was born, family vacations, birthday celebrations, the promises we once believed would last forever. Then I remembered another memory. Noah standing beside his birthday cake, looking at the empty doorway, waiting for a mother who never came. That memory answered every question in my heart. Without hesitation, I signed my name. James collected the papers and smiled kindly. "It's done." I stood up and thanked him. As I stepped outside, my phone vibrated. It was a message from Emily. "I know I can't change the past. I only hope one day you'll remember me for the good moments too." I read the message once. Then I locked my phone. Not because I hated her, but because I had finally accepted that some chapters are meant to end. When I arrived home, Noah ran toward me with the biggest smile. "Dad!" I lifted him into my arms. "How's my champion?" He laughed. "Better now that you're home." I smiled. "Me too, buddy." He wrapped his little arms around my neck. "What are we doing today?" I looked at him and answered without thinking. "Anything you want." His eyes sparkled with excitement. "Can we go to the park?" I laughed. "Absolutely." As we walked toward the car together, I realized something I had forgotten for a long time. Happiness doesn't always come from holding on. Sometimes, it comes from having the courage to let go. ISD. The house felt strangely quiet that morning. For the first time in months, I wasn't waiting for an apology or another excuse. I was making breakfast with Noah. "Dad," he said with a grin, "your pancakes are getting better." I laughed. "I'll take that as a compliment." "It is." He took another bite and smiled. "You know, I like mornings like this." "So do I, buddy." He looked at me for a moment. "Are you okay now?" His question caught me off guard. I set my coffee down and looked into his eyes. "I'm getting there." "What does that mean?" "It means healing takes time." He nodded thoughtfully. "So, it's like when I scrape my knee?" I smiled. "Exactly. At first it hurts. Then little by little it gets better." He reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "We'll heal together." Those 4 words meant more than he could ever understand. After breakfast, I drove him to school. Before getting out of the car, he hugged me tightly. "See you this afternoon, Dad." "I'll be here." "I know you will." As I watched him walk through the school gate, I realized something. For so long, I had been fighting to save the life I had lost. Now, I wanted to build a better one. When I arrived at my office, my assistant walked in with a smile. "Good morning, Daniel." "Morning. You have a visitor." I wasn't expecting anyone. She hesitated before answering. "He says it's about your father." My heart skipped a beat. "My father?" She nodded. "He said it's important." I slowly stood up. Whoever was waiting outside, Was about to reopen a chapter of my life I thought had ended years ago. I walked out of my office and saw an elderly man standing near the reception desk. He held a small brown envelope in his hands. The moment he saw me, he stood up. "Daniel?" "Yes." He smiled politely. "My name is Thomas Bennett." I shook his hand. "It's nice to meet you." He looked at me for a long moment. "I wish we had met under better circumstances." I frowned. "What do you mean?" He glanced at the envelope. "I was your father's closest friend." My heart skipped a beat. "My father never mentioned you. He wanted to." Thomas sighed, but life didn't give him enough time. I invited him into my office. After we sat down, he carefully placed the envelope on my desk. "I've carried this for almost 10 years. I stared at it. "Why?" "Because your father made me a promise." "What promise?" He told me, "Don't give this to Daniel until he's strong enough to understand it." I couldn't take my eyes off the envelope. "Why did you decide today was the right day?" Thomas smiled sadly. "I heard what you've been through." He paused before continuing. "Pain has a way of changing a man." I slowly reached toward the envelope. "Is this really from him?" Thomas nodded. I watched him write your name on it. My fingers trembled as I picked it up. It felt unreal. For years, I believed there were no more words left for my father. Now, his final message was resting in my hands. Just as I was about to open it, Thomas gently raised his hand. "Daniel." I looked up. "Before you read it, there's something you need to know." His serious expression made my heart race. Whatever he was about to say, I knew my life would never be the same again. Thomas leaned forward and folded his hands. "Daniel, before you open that letter, you need to understand why your father trusted me." I looked at him without saying a word. He continued softly. During the last few weeks of his life, he worried about only one thing. I swallowed hard. "What was that?" "You." My chest tightened. "He knew you were strong." Thomas smiled. "But he also knew you had a habit of carrying everyone's pain on your shoulders." I lowered my eyes. He wasn't wrong. Thomas nodded. He told me, "My son will always try to save everyone else before he saves himself." I felt my throat tighten. That sounds exactly like him. He pushed the envelope a little closer. "There's another reason he asked me to wait." I frowned. "What reason?" "He believed one day you would face a choice between anger and peace." I stared at him. How could he know that? He didn't know the details. Thomas paused. "He simply understood your heart." For a long moment, neither of us spoke. Finally, I broke the silence. "Did he ever say he was proud of me?" Thomas smiled warmly. "He said it every single time he spoke about you." I couldn't hold back my tears. I wish I had heard him say it just once. He hoped this letter would tell you everything he didn't have time to say. My hands trembled as I broke the seal on the envelope. Before I could unfold the first page, my phone suddenly rang. The screen showed Noah's school. My heart skipped a beat. I answered immediately. "Hello." The receptionist sounded calm but concerned. "Mr. Carter, could you please come to the school as soon as possible?" I stood up instantly. "Is Noah okay?" There was a brief silence. "He's safe, but something happened that you need to see." I grabbed my keys without another question. The letter from my father remained on the desk, still unopened. I reached Noah's school in less than 10 minutes. My heart was pounding the entire drive. The receptionist met me at the entrance. "Mr. Carter, thank you for coming so quickly." "Where's Noah?" "He's in the principal's office." I hurried down the hallway and opened the door. Noah was sitting quietly in a chair, his head lowered. The moment he saw me, he stood up. "Dad." I immediately hugged him. "Are you hurt?" He shook his head. "No." I looked at the principal. "What happened?" She sighed. "There was an argument during recess." I frowned. "An argument?" She nodded. "A few children were making fun of Noah because of the problems between you and Emily." My heart sank. I looked at Noah. "What happened then, buddy?" He whispered. "They said Mom didn't love us anymore." I felt my chest tighten. I told them to stop. They kept laughing. So, I pushed one of them. The room fell silent. I knelt in front of him. "Look at me." His eyes were filled with tears. "I'm sorry, Dad." I gently wiped a tear from his face. "You made a mistake." He nodded. "I know, but you're not a bad person." He looked at me. "I'm not." I smiled softly. "No, you were protecting your heart." He wrapped his arms around me. "I just want us to be happy again." I hugged him tightly. "We will be." Maybe not today. Maybe not tomorrow. But one day, I promise. As we walked out of school together, I realized something. Children don't just hear our words. They carry our pain too. I held Noah's hand a little tighter. From that moment on, I promised myself that no matter what happened between Emily and me, I would never let my son carry the weight of our broken past alone. That evening, after Noah had fallen asleep, I sat alone in the living room. The house was silent. The envelope lay on the coffee table exactly where I had left it. I took a deep breath. "This is it," I whispered. I carefully unfolded the letter. The first line was enough to bring tears to my eyes. "My dear son, if you're reading this, it means I'm no longer there to tell you these words in person." I stopped for a moment. I could almost hear my father's voice. I continued reading. "Life will disappoint you. People you trust may break your heart. But never let someone else's mistakes change the man you were raised to be." I wiped away a tear. Every sentence felt as if he already knew the pain I would one day carry. Then I reached the final paragraph. "Daniel, if you ever become a father, remember this. Your child will not remember how successful you were. He will remember whether you were there when he needed you most." I lowered the letter and covered my face. Those words reminded me of Noah waiting beside his birthday cake. At that moment, I realized I had already made the right choice. Not because I wanted revenge, not because I wanted to win, but because my son deserved a father who would never make him feel forgotten. Just then, I heard soft footsteps behind me. "Dad!" I turned around. Noah stood there, rubbing his sleepy eyes. "Why are you crying?" I smiled gently and opened my arms. "Come here, buddy." He hugged me tightly. "Is everything okay?" I kissed the top of his head. "It will be." He looked at the letter. "Was Grandpa talking to you?" I nodded. "Yes." "What did he say?" I smiled through my tears. He reminded me what really matters. Noah squeezed my hand. "I'm glad you're my dad." My heart felt lighter than it had in months. I folded the letter carefully and placed it back inside the envelope. For the first time since my world fell apart, I wasn't living for yesterday. I was living for tomorrow. And moi.